Our website is sightandsoundcare.org. Sight and the and is A-N-D, so sightandsoundcare.org. We're also on Facebook under Sight and Sound Care and Instagram as well. And you can see things like my Tom Petty letter. You can see the pictures from the first time I saw him in 1979 on Facebook on Tom Petty Nation as well. But if you go to sightandsoundcare.org and you want to make a donation to help people get free health care, I will just mention no salaries, no income, 100% of the funds go to buying glasses and providing vision care for those people we appreciate and love so much.
Tom Petty. Tom Petty Project. Tom Petty. Hey, Tom Petty Project.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, my fine friends. You're joining me, Kevin Brown, for another episode of the Tom Petty Project podcast. I wanted to wish you a happy new year, which will be happening in a couple of days as this releases. If you're going to be enjoying some festive drinks and libations, please make sure that you plan a safe ride home. To finish off my Guest Ember series, I wanted to save my chat with Mark Lindsey until last. As well as being a super fan and a veteran of more than 40 Tom Petty concerts in his life, Mark also runs the amazing Sight and Sound Care program, which provides free vision care to musicians and people in the music industry across the US. A statistic on his website that blew my mind was that 76% of music professionals in the US have no access at all to group benefits. So to be able to step in and provide essential vision care in the way that Mark and his team does is so incredibly important and life-changing. Sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Mark Lindsey. It's always nice to start with, what's your background? Where did you grow up? What was music like in your house? What's your sort of exposure to music? What's your background?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you even had me on because, as we mentioned, I'm the first, I guess, just pure fan, no musical talent. There'll be no talks of key progression or chord changes or any of that with me. It's all layman, just a true fanatic.
Yeah.
But I feel like I've got the resume to talk about him as from a true fanatic level as well. So I grew up in a military family. My mom is Puerto Rican and my father was a sailor from the South. So Tom and I have a lot of similarities of being born in Florida. I was born in Key West. He, of course, was born in Gainesville. We both moved to California. But being a military kid, I grew up all over the place. I moved every probably 2.5 years around the world. I lived in Scotland, Florida, Hawaii, San Diego, where I mainly grew up. And, my influences were crazy. You've got my mom on the Puerto Rican side with everything from flamenco from Spain to Celia Cruz, salsa music to my father's Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash background. So you want to talk eclectic. I would be at a Johnny Cash show and then I would be at a flamenco show with my family. And and my first show was Johnny Cash in the early 70s as well from my dad. So
that was your first show, was Johnny Cash.
My first
oh
show,
my
Johnny
God.
Cash.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was during that time period. It was in San Diego where like I said, I mainly grew up. And he had not too long ago had that big arrest at the border where he was bringing back a trunk full of speed. But it was still a fantastic show. And just, live music when you're that age, it was like, wow, this guy's, and at a fair. It wasn't like it was the peak. He was playing an arena. It was the fair as well. So regardless, I was living in Hawaii for a while. Again, being a kid who moves every 2.5 years. My dad was in the submarine service. So like I said, we lived in Scotland, and it was at a project there working with their nuclear weapons and nuclear submarines in a little town called Dunoon on the west coast of Scotland.
Absolutely.
So we lived there for a while, but then I went to Hawaii and I came in mid high school. And as you can imagine, not the greatest time to jump into school with a bunch of people, and there were only a few white kids in the school. And so I was the haole at the school there. So it kind of drives you to find music as a respite from what's going on in your life. So I got into music and sports, and at that year, Tom Petty released "Damn the Torpedoes," and boom, it was all over. I have my wife and I joke about since then. I've either paid for Tom's Jaguar or that house in Malibu with all the money and time I've spent going to shows, buying merch, all that kind of stuff as well. But, you remember the content of that album. You've got Don't Do Me Like That, Refugee. I mean, it just sunk in with me. And it was, like I said, I was done. And I went on to go see him almost 40 times after that, between the last tour and that first time I saw him in 1980 in Honolulu as well. And you were talking about this earlier in a podcast, and that was a ridiculously high energy level show that people don't know. You have to remember the marketplace at that time. That same year, I probably saw the Police, The Knack, The Clash, all these bands that were still that punk thing that he was for some ridiculous reason in the media thrown in with.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw venues with him where he would be with Modern English, Bow Wow Wow, Bananarama, and he'd be the headliner. You're
Yeah.
like, what the world kind of eclectic mess is this? And then he'd have his straightforward rock and roll, right? Which, always resonates as well. So
Yeah.
I saw him a bazillion times, as I mentioned, but that Damn the Torpedoes tour just cooked me, and I was done. There was nothing else that really mattered, and I became a deadhead for Tom Petty, basically.
Well, side one of Damn the Torpedoes, Refugee,
Yeah.
Here Comes My Girl,
Yeah.
Even the Losers, Shadow of a Doubt, Century City. I mean,
Right.
that just blows your mind. I mean, and that was
It did.
Iovine, right? I mean, Iovine wanted all the hits up front.
Yes.
He wasn't interested in albums; he was interested in hits.
Yes.
So he loads everything on side one. But I mean, you come off the back of the debut. Obviously, it has some great tracks on it. It's a bit of a mishmash of an album. You're Gonna Get It is a little bit, again, it's a bit sort of a bit of a mess here and there.
Yeah.
But this one,
right.
I mean, I must have been sort of, it just seared itself onto the American consciousness, like in a way that probably doesn't happen in England, right? Because they're such an American band, and not in that sort of overtly MAGA kind of thing. It's not that kind of thing, but there's a very American thing to it. So when that came out, then Damn the Torpedoes comes out. Did you have like a cohort of friends who also got into that, or was it your thing?
Yes, no. It was definitely. I mean, the album was ubiquitous on the airwaves of rock and roll radio. It was. How can they play it any more often? It went crazy, and then of course he follows up with a bunch of other great albums from Jimmy, and it just continues on from there. But no, it was definitely throughout the culture and the media, and I wasn't alone. It just obviously resonated with me personally at that time.
Yeah, it's the right sound at the right time, and it's that thing too. I've talked lots on the podcast about is that album really did. And talking to musicians and producers, it changed the way that rock and roll sounded, really. Because it was the end, it was kind of the end of the 70s era of drums.
Right.
And it's this new thing now where Iovine got that drum sound that everyone copied from then on, even though Stan obviously tore his hair out and hated it. But, but look,
there's actually a mini documentary on just the making of that album. And that's a big part of it. The whole Stan Lynch thing about what was he on, what was he not on. And Jim, and again, what was the number of takes on Refugee alone?
Oh, it's up in the almost 100s, I think, right? It was,
I
think it was 60 or 70, Benmont said, Well, that's the one that Mike even said that's the only time he's ever left the studio. Right? He said, because I just couldn't deal with it anymore. I had to get out of there. And, so if Mike Campbell's getting pushed to the audience, the easygoing Mike Campbell's like, okay, I see.
But I will say, thank you, smashing success. They nailed it.
Yeah. Well, and set the template, right? I mean, I talk about this lots too, where Iovine takes this band who really, the first two records, Denny Cordell produced most of the first album, and then Noah Shark and Tom and Denny kind of coming in and out. So they were kind of left to their own devices, more or less.
Yeah.
Iovine comes in and he's a taskmaster, and he teaches them how to record. So they get studio craft now, which is a totally different thing from performance. And you think about those three albums, you can see the progression by the time they get to Long After Dark. And I think that sometimes that's maybe where Tom's criticism of it comes from, or disdain for it comes from, where they could just do that in their sleep. Once they get to that stage, they know how to make a record with Jimmy Iovine. They know how to write. They know how to arrange. I mean, I love that record. I think it's massively unheralded.
Yeah.
But you can see where it's like, okay, for an artist like Tom, I think I need to do something different now. I could keep making records with Jimmy. They'd still go to the top of the charts, but I think I need something else.
The other part about that, Kevin, is that period was the record companies burned these guys out. It was tour, record. Yeah. What are you doing? You can't stay in Los Angeles, get back on the road. And you see the history, and it's Australia, Japan, like I said, Hawaii. That's an ass kicker on people. And I know one of the early things Tom said was that, he goes, we're just a bunch of guys from Gainesville, which, by the way, we can get into the whole thing of how in the world did these guys get this close together and become, how do you get that many good guys in one band? That's a ridiculous, but it's another conversation for another time. Is he said, listen, we're just kind of a bunch of knuckleheads. Somebody has to take over the leadership here and run this band, or we're not going to be anything. And you could see he was the guy who made the phone calls, who organized things, did the trip to LA, just got it going and said, it's Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And it looks like the rest of the band said, great, you do the work. And he was the one motivated as well.
Well, and it's that part of, when you listen to read Warren Zane's biography, which I'm rereading for the umpteenth time, he said there was a point at which he realized that he just needed to start taking this seriously. And just like you said, it was a little bit of luck that he found a bunch of musicians who, even in Mudcrutch, right, they just up sticks
Yeah,
and left. But I love
absolutely.
that, that just what fortune, what good
Yeah,
luck to sort of stumble across Mike Campbell playing guitar in
right.
Randall Marsh's bedroom at the farm, and saying, "Well, bring him out," and he plays Johnny Be Good, and that's well, there you go, you're in my band now. I
You're
mean,
in my band.
those are just. But I was talking to someone about this. I think the thing with Tom is, and it's the same thing that all successful people have in life. You need a bit of luck, no matter what you do, but it's recognizing when that luck comes along and grabbing hold of it and not letting go and knowing how to use it. And Tom was, I think, unparalleled at doing
Yeah,
that.
I think another piece of that is I don't have any other options, right? I used to work in a graveyard. I'm
Yeah,
not going back there. Or, as my dad, who was from Florida, also said, he goes, listen, if I wouldn't have joined the Navy, he goes, I'd be talking about transmissions on the porch still.
yeah,
That was the
yeah,
out, right? You have no other options, and that drives you as well as timing, luck, and an incredible amount of talent.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so just stepping back a little bit though. So you're, like you said, you're not a musician.
No.
What do you do? What's your background?
Well, so I'm in the optical business now. I've been in it for about 20 years, and I think we've kind of hinted it online before. I also run a nonprofit called Sight and Sound, and if anybody wants to check us out, we're at sightandsound.org. And what we do is we provide free vision care to musicians anywhere in the world. We've done Canada and the U.S. mainly, but we're trying to expand. So about 10 years ago, my wife and I were volunteering at an event called Folk Alliance, where about 3,000 musicians get together in Kansas City, and some are professional, some are amateurs, but it's a huge convention. And I volunteered just to help as a lover of music and a fan of music. I volunteered. They put me at the information booth, and while we were there, I noticed everybody was coming up. The musicians are, can you tell me where the free dental care is? Can you tell me where the free hearing aids are? Can you tell me where the blood test is? Where's the physical? And being a guy in the optical business, I said, I haven't heard anybody ask about where do I get glasses and an exam and that kind of stuff. So I
Yeah,
said, oh, this is going to make me look good to these guys. I'm going to go find out who's doing this and then come back and bring them, right? And I'll volunteer with them as well. And so we did a bunch of research, and there's nobody doing it in the United States. There are plenty of regional groups like Music Cares with the Grammys, which we partner with, that provide healthcare. But as you know, in the U.S., healthcare, these musicians are buying strings and gas to get to the next gig. They're not buying healthcare, right?
yeah.
It's not really available or affordable. So we set it up, we came back, and we did 200 exams for people and gave out glasses to hundreds that very first year. And I went, wow, this is a true need. So we've been doing it for 10 years. We do thousands of exams every year, all for free. We provide glasses. We provide further medical care if it's something we can't do. They can get custom prescription glasses, sunglasses, readers, all the basics at no cost. And we have a program whereby if they have to get a custom pair of glasses, which we can't do on site, as you can imagine, there are literally 40 million combinations of eye needs as well. So we don't have everything on hand. It's like a mobile MASH clinic, if you will, where we're just doing the basics, right? So they can get a certificate, and we have a partnership with an 1,100 door chain, so they can go get an proper medical exam and a pair of glasses custom made for them for free. And one of the great things is if they're on the road, they can get their exam in Houston and have the glasses delivered in Austin, all for free as well.
Wow.
So we do that at it's the side hustle, but there's no money involved and no gain. It's a
Of course.
nonprofit 501c3. So we do that when we can around the U.S. And when I eventually retire, it's something we hopefully can permanently do. And we're trying to get franchises of it getting out because the demand is incredible. And it's really a way a person who doesn't have any musical talent can kind of give back. And I always say it's kind of an excuse to get backstage and be a little closer to the music when you don't have any talent. It's a hustle.
I was looking because on your website too, I think there's something that people forget about too, is that, you said over 40% of independent artists have no healthcare,
Yeah,
but it's 76% of music professionals. So
right.
that's not just musicians, because to put on a show
Yeah,
takes roadies and lighting techs and bookers and caterers and all kinds of people who are in this industry who also get marginalized because of, obviously if you don't have free healthcare down there, then
yeah.
that's a problem. So I think that being able to sort of get those people not having to worry too much about that, then the creative arts can sort of get a new breath
Yes.
of life. So I think what you're doing it's insanely cool. You must, I mean,
It's I tell you, it's very rewarding and it's very selfish because we get to all these great places. You'd be
yeah,
surprised. I've got 8-time Grammy Award winners who've been in to get exams and free glasses, which
yeah,
kind of surprises people. They think everybody's a millionaire, but with Spotify now, if they're not touring, they're not making money. And buying CDs is only, again, it's show to show for a lot of these folks. I think people would be very surprised. The other part about it is we get them in, and sometimes we come in and we've got notes back from people going, you saved my vision. I was
Yeah.
going to lose my eyesight. I didn't know, because I'll get on my soapbox a little bit here for the optical industry. But the thing is, when a basic eye exam, which can take 20 minutes, can detect over 200 different diseases, the eyes to the soul, that old cliche, right? Diabetes, high blood pressure,
Yeah.
people are keratoconus, all these basic things can all be seen from an eye exam, and then we can send them on to get proper help somewhere else. So the stories are incredible. It's incredibly rewarding, and the feedback and the thanks we get from people it's crazy. We get tons of notes coming in about thank you, and but we do partner again because it's very regional. There's Smash in Seattle, there's Ham in Austin, there's the Grammys out of Los Angeles, but it's fragmented. As much as we love and appreciate our artists, they're not being taken care of, and this is kind of a small section that we can kind of give back to as well.
Here's a question for you then, on the professional side.
Yeah.
And I've wondered this often myself. So in Canada, we do have,
Yes.
universal healthcare, and I grew up in England, where it kind of came from. But eye care still it's not considered like glasses and lenses. Why is being able to see not a basic human right? That baffles me.
I agree with you. And the other part about it is, here's my other one. I always say, I go, everybody pretty much has dental care. But if I were to come to you and ask you, I go, hey, I'm going to remove your eyes, or I'm going to remove your teeth. What's your preference? We make tons of fake teeth. We have dentures. We have all kinds of things to help dental. We have no replacements for the eyes, but it's second tier focus. And you would always answer your eyes, right? I mean, because it's easy to get, plenty of people have dentures. It's very common. So a lot of it is the industry itself. It kind of battles optometrists, ophthalmologists, and it's more of a business thing. And the insurance companies don't make as much money from it as they do from other procedures. So it's one of those. It's a business thing, much like, why don't we have universal care in the US? It's probably a political thing more than it is a thing about being able to provide and take care of people. But again, we love these people so much.
Yeah.
We're moved by what they do, and we don't take care of them.
So where does the funding come from then for that? Because obviously that's a huge expense, because glasses, lenses, your time for people to go and work that. Where does the money for that come from?
We do a once a year fundraiser where we have musicians volunteer, and we sell tickets and have raffles. But I got to tell you, we're only probably doing 4 or 5 events a year, and we get requests for over 24 a year to come and do this. So we're only filling the events we can fill and fund as well. We do get occasionally some small grants, but a lot of it is, quite frankly, funded by my wife and I, just covering the expenses for all the artists.
Well, I mean, look, okay, where can people donate?
They can go to sightandsoundcare.org, and it's the full word, and sight and sound care.org as well, and make a donation. We are a 501c3, so everything can be a write-off for the U.S. taxes if they make a donation as well. And that kind of leads me to the other thing we've talked about online, is we often dedicate all these events to Tom.
Yeah, so and it's that thing of, I think, because I remember when you sent me that, I was thinking, oh, I know the estate is they're quite rigid about certain things, but I think that when you're doing it in honor of Tom Petty, and you're not sort of saying it's, you're making very clear that it's not through the estate. But have you butted up against that at all? I mean, and if this is sort of sensitive, we can take it.
No. You know what? And I love and respect the fact that you're always very much, we don't have the rights to the music. We're nothing to do with the estate. I am completely the same way. This is just a guy who loves Tom Petty, puts up a sign and says, listen, I know he gave back to homeless organizations at Midnight Mission in Los Angeles, and he gave back very quietly to a lot of charities. So he was philanthropic. So that was kind of my inspiration to why we should do the same thing. So and it's funny, I put up a sign just by the desk when people come through and just say it's dedicated to him. Tons of people go, he's the guy, the reason I'm in music. Love him. He's the best. Fantastic. And that's very rewarding as well. Even Mike has a foundation for Tassie for dogs as well. Yeah. So there are good guys who give back as well.
Isn't it funny that, I mean, I've never heard anyone, and I don't know of many people who have heard anyone say, Tom Petty, oh, I hate Tom Petty. You'll get people who don't really love him like we do, or people who are not that familiar with him, but you never hear anyone say, that guy sucks.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I think it's that there's something he gave off, and it was on stage. You could see he was appreciative. He was humble. I think he never forgot where he came from. And as I mentioned, he gave back. And those are all the qualities that, we as human beings appreciate from each other.
Yeah.
Very respectful guy.
Well, and you saw him. I was looking through going back through the notes when the offline conversation we had, and you saw him at two of the Fillmore shows. Because one of the questions I always ask is, if you could go back and watch any show, which one would you go to? And I'm going to ask you later, but a lot of people say the Fillmore.
Yeah, I caught 2 out of the 20 shows there, but you know what?
Wow.
I got to tell you, I was Bo Diddley was one of the openers
Oh,
one night, and Bo Diddley was walking around the Fillmore talking to people and shaking hands, like Mr. Diddley. Right? It's like,
oh my
what do you say
lord.
to Bo Diddley? You don't say
Yeah.
anything but thank you, right? That's about it. And
Yeah.
Tom, of course, was super respectful about having Bo Diddley open for him. And that was another thing you got from Tom on stage. It was very sincere as well. I mean, I was also at some Fonda shows that blew my mind. The Petty
Wow.
Dillon show. I was told the one time I, spent a lot of time in San Diego, so I could drive up to LA to see the shows. This is the mind blower, and thank God there's a bootleg of this out there because people would not believe me when I tell this story. So we went up and saw him. Lenny Kravitz opens for him. After the show, Bob Dylan comes out, Annie Lennox, Dave Stewart, Bruce Springsteen, and then Lenny came back on stage as well for all to play. John Fogerty was there as well. They all came on stage. I mean, we're just looking at each other like, are you kidding me? This is the lottery winning night.
Yeah. This is a Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Right on stage, right in front of us.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. It was crazy. And they were playing together and it was phenomenal.
Was that the one where, because you said like there's the time and Dylan sort of is walking off stage and the Heartbreakers obviously playing, and he goes off and he says there was a time when you could turn the radio on and hear a real song from a real band. This is a
Different
band that like
tour.
doing this is like
Yeah.
a band that doing real music and then walks
Yes,
off stage.
yes.
How Dylan is that though, right?
I know that is so Dylan. That was a time you could, yeah. And it was fantastic. And it was kind of half walking off as he said it with a microphone. So it was fantastic. And then the band just kicked into the next song and it was great. That was a separate tour. That was the
Okay.
True Confessions tour
Yeah.
as well, versus I think the one I saw with Lenny was probably in the mid 80s, but
That was the one after, I think, right? It was the one when they did it.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But it was great. And I must have seen Stevie Nicks with him probably just because there were so many in quantity, probably a dozen times where she came out. They did
Wow.
Insider, and of course, Stop Dragging My Heart Around, and then she just sang backup for a while.
Yeah.
Because there are no girls in the Heartbreakers.
There are no girls in the band. But I love there's two things about that I always love. Is one is that Tom never did Insider with anyone else.
Yes.
Which a lot of artists would do. They would just, they could have any sort of female artist could come out and sing that.
Yeah.
You get what's her name, Ann Wilson from Hearts.
Right.
There's lots of
Great pipes.
people could do that. Great
Yeah.
pipes, great singer. But it's Tom and Stevie, and their voices together are just special. And then the
Yes.
other thing is Stevie Nicks was, by the time she did Insider, a huge international star through
Yes.
Fleetwood Mac and then in her own right. But
Yeah.
she'll still stand on stage in the wings and just sing
Yes.
background vocals to Heartbreakers. I think that says a lot about their character of those two people.
Yeah, those early days with her hiding with Jimmy's place from Tom are very, very funny stories as well. So no, she was absolutely, the additional heartbreaker who could never get in. And I love she still dedicates a song to him, and she did with Fleetwood Mac and when Mike was in the band. So clearly there's a lot of good relationships there.
When it's that thing that you find, obviously now that you hang around with musicians a lot, even these sort of you can get to this level with Fleetwood Mac and Stevie Nicks and Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers and John Haidt and Jackson Browne, all these bands, but they're first and foremost, and certainly the one musicians are like, the musicians, it's the music they care about, the music they love. So they don't really have an ego. If you can play,
right,
come and join us. Let's jam it out. Let's come and play. And it's
Yeah.
just that party atmosphere. So I was going to say, like, as a band, you've seen the Heartbreakers, from 79 through to, I'm sure you saw the 40th anniversary tour then?
Twice on the last tour.
Yeah. So you've seen this band evolve and grow, and it's something Tom was always proud of. And of course, we're getting the Mojo stuff trickling out now. I think we're getting a documentary. I think we're getting a full-length documentary.
I hope so.
That band grew, and as a set of musicians and as a collective, I think that they always said the Fillmore was the height of it, and to be able to pull out, two new Bo Diddley songs that they'd never played before, sound check them, go out and play them.
Right.
Well, first of all, you need to be good at your instruments, but second of all, you kind of need Ben Montench in your band, right?
Right. We always talk about that too. It's one of those ones that your questions, I'm always like, man, it's you love Mike Campbell and he's always going to be your first choice. But if you've seen him, like I said, as many times as I've seen him, and by the way, I always tell this to people, I go, obviously I'm not subjective about the band. We'll be honest. But I have never seen them be sloppy or phone in a show.
Yeah.
And that has always blown my mind, that they never phoned it in or took it easy. They were always professional. I think that was Tom was probably somewhat of a taskmaster on that one as well. And again, you got Ben Mont, and I know the great story about like he was the only one who could go along with Bob Dylan, who does, key changes and obscure songs, not tell him, and they'd look over to him for the lead. And I think that's
Yeah.
a terrific testament to Benmont. I also love the fact that Benmont's family was a bunch of judges, and he could have gone on to law school and been an established. But thank God Tom talked him out of it, right? Because I always say nobody adds more to a song than Benmont. And those times I saw him at the Fonda or the Wiltern, the guy could just add another level of song and nuance. And again, that's somebody who's not really a musician, but that's not even lost on an amateur how much he added.
It's why Full Moon Fever and Highway Companion don't sound like Heartbreakers records.
Yes.
It's because Benmont's not on it. Well, Wildflowers does because he is, and that sounds more like a really Wildflowers. It is a Heartbreakers record in all but name, but that's why those two records don't sound anything like it, because Benmont has a certain thing that he always brings to those records. And then the other thing I love about him too is, well, all three of them, the three-headed beast, when you listen to them and listen to them speak, none of them went to college.
Yes.
None of them sort of had further education, but they're all extraordinarily intelligent, well-read, very articulate human beings. And that sort of...
And they're also, I think they have a great sense of humor. You also notice
absolutely.
To the whole thing. They're all good hangs, and they're friends as well. It's funny you mentioned the Benmont thing. I mean, I go back to Refugee and I go, isn't that really a guitar lead that he is doing without, I don't know if it's a Hammond B3 organ or what it is, but it's like he takes it over and that's the lead versus you got Mike Campbell in the band. How is that not an automatic? No, nice try, but I'm sorry, we've got Mike Campbell. There's no other conversation going on here.
But also Mike just letting the, okay, I know I could shred here. That's okay. But Benmont's, and I was listening to, I don't know if you've been seeing the Mojo interviews they've been putting out. So that the one that Benmont was saying that it's knowing when you play with each other, and they were talking about Mojo because they played without headphones on.
Yeah.
You really have to listen to what the other person's playing so that when you can recognize, he's gonna play a fill or he's gonna do something here. I just need to back off now.
Yeah.
And a lot of bands don't have that. It isn't a common thing to be able to do it that spontaneously.
Right. I think time probably helps with that. I've got to get my piece in. I'm young. I've got an ego. Blah blah blah. They seem to set that aside to make the music come first, and that's clear from all the albums as well. That was the priority.
But like you said too, that was set early on because Tom always was the band leader. That's the buck stops here. We'll be democratic when it comes to putting the arrangements together, but I got final say. It's my name on the can. The ingredients are going to be good in there, right? So
I go back a little bit because I'm thinking of those early shows in the late 70s and early 80s, and that energy level and that jumping is just something that obviously all of us lose over time. But I don't think people knew. And I think, those other bands I mentioned, it was still that vibe of punk rock ending, but you still got to sell. This is still a business, and you need to be energetic and you need to have energy. And I think he had it naturally, but I'm just saying it was, again, the Clash, the Sex Pistols, the Ramones. Not that the Ramones move much, but you know what I'm saying. It's very much a different time of music as well.
Yeah, the shoegazing thing. I think they started it, right? Oh, that's so funny. So then, okay, so you've what is there any venue, because we'll get into 10 questions much later because we've got lots to talk about, but was there any venue you never got to see Tom in that you kind of think, oh man, I really kind of wish I'd seen him at Red Rocks or Madison Square Garden? Or
I think I saw him 4 times at Red Rocks. So that one's off the limits.
that's second on my bucket list.
And the last time, I think I mentioned it in one of your Facebook posts, was Joe Cocker opening for him on the Mojo tour. And that was terrific as well. That was the very last time at Red Rocks. But I also on my list, I never saw him at Madison Square Garden, much like I know that's one of your bucket list items. That would be on mine. The Gorge up in Washington, I always hear is a fantastic venue. And then probably in the UK, I probably love to see him somewhere in the UK as well. So those are kind of my bucket list. But you know what, I'm spoiled. I got to see plenty.
Yeah. Well, like Palladium would be a great venue too, just because the acoustics in that room. God, I mean, because someone was saying the other day about like the Fillmore isn't a great venue. Like it's just like a little square boxy kind of room. But when you get those venues where you sort of have that weight of history in there, there is something just a little bit special, because I think it just changes the mood of the audience.
Yes.
And so that energizes you, and of course that's going to feed up to the band, it's going to feed back. So there is something about those venues like the Whiskey and like the Fillmore and like the Cavern would have been in Liverpool, right? Where the room doesn't have to be great. It's the same with studios. mean, they recorded Full Moon Fever in Mike's garage. You don't need a multi-million-dollar studio to make something that sounds good. So, you
No,
know.
that's true. And I think one of my favorite small venues I saw him in was the Fonda Theater in Los Angeles, which is
Yeah.
very, very small. Probably the smallest venue I ever saw them in, over the 40 years that I was a fan and followed him around. But that one was great. And again, Fillmore is special no matter what. It still is, those chandeliers, and when you walk on
Yeah.
that floor and the Bill Graham history and all the bands there, it's a terrific spot. And that buzz in the crowd. I saw the Dirty Knobs there not too long ago.
Oh, nice.
And they were fantastic. And even Marcy, Mike's wife, comes out and does that introduction.
Yeah.
And it's still moving. The crowd just goes bananas as well. And Mike kills it. I mean, that band rocks.
Yeah, they're a great band. I was going to ask you if you've seen them. So did you see Mudcrutch as well? Or
Yes, I saw Mudcrutch twice and the Dirty Knobs twice.
So just in terms of that, then, because this is a question I've never asked, and I've had two people on who've seen him lots, but did you notice a difference? Was there a difference in sort of how relaxed they were or their sort of performance when they were playing a smaller venue versus a big arena or a big outdoor thing? Was it different?
Yeah, it was. I think the most casual and relaxed I saw Tom over the 40 plus years that I saw them was a Mudcrutch show in Oakland at the Fox Theater. And it's where he's back. Other people are taking the lead songs a lot. So that one, it makes sense to me. And he was laughing. I've never seen him that relaxed in my entire life, is when he was with Mudcrutch at that last tour.
Yeah.
But absolutely, there's a different thing. There's much more conversation going on in a small venue like the Fillmore, which is reflected in that album, than it was an arena tour. And I think for the obvious reasons of hello, Cincinnati, when there's 18,000 people there, it is a much different animal. And you've got to, and again, I think they play more hits in those kind of places. And it's first time for a lot of people. And Tom was, I think when they did that set list, everybody got blown away because they had those songs down, and you got maybe a 2-3 song variants per night on a tour as well. And it may be, the last couple of songs they play different. They had those down too, but it was not a big variance. So I think that was the arena setting as well.
You think about the pressure of that. So I often think about that with a big artist like Petty or Springsteen or Dylan, or whatever it is. You're always going to leave someone not having heard their favorite song.
Right.
Or not having heard 3 or 4 songs where they think, oh man, I really wish they'd done. Because at some point, you're going to have to leave out The Waiting.
Yes.
Or you're going to have to leave out Learning to Fly. Or you're going to have to leave out, I don't know, It's Good to Be King. Or any number of songs that people kind of want to hear. So that pressure to do that, to me, is insane, which is, again, I always go back to Fillmore. And the box set that we got is, I think it's the best rock and roll document that's ever been released, honestly.
It's
because it shows the full breadth of a band who are completely unconstrained, really, and they're going to play, of course, like you said, the core 10 or 12 songs they did on that run, but it shows how good a band can actually be.
Right.
And
the genres of music they cover in that, I think, is well, right? From an acoustic to a 50s rocker to whatever they wanted to do. I don't know if I do have the Blue Stingrays album, the side one of Mike's surf music as well. There's surf music in there on some nights. So that was a true excitement. When you're outside getting in to go into that line, it's like, what fantastic gem are we going to get tonight? Right. I mean, and that's the best feeling in the world, especially for a fan like me who saw him so many times, because I would see the tour several times, obviously, if I got to almost 40 shows, and even those 3 or 4 nuances of different nights would be exciting to me. So that was the lottery. How I didn't just move in and camp out front, I don't know, but it was a different time.
Wouldn't it be interesting to find out if there was anyone who actually went to all 20 dates? I'm sure there must have been 1 or 2 who...
There must have been. Yeah.
Would have been so much fun. But you could also see, Mike and Tom must have been like, that guy was here last. And that guy's been here all night. I think I stalking me, security.
That's a roadie. He's ours.
Oh God, can you imagine being a roadie for Tom Petty? Oh.
No, that was always a dream. Absolutely, love to do that one. You probably don't make enough money to make a true living, but but I have to go back and tell you. You mentioned something about the healthcare. I just want to let everybody know listening. We absolutely take care of the roadies. We take care of the catering staff. We take care of everybody because we know everybody needs optical care. There was one time we were doing the Vans Warp Tour, and there's a lot of up and coming bands there that we worked at a venue, and we had somebody come with a pretty well-known band, and he had some readers, and he was telling me, he goes, I'm having trouble seeing distance in the road and then getting the speedometer thing. And the guy had a pair of readers, those little cheap ones you buy, and one lens was missing. And I go, you probably have $300,000 in guitars. You've got another $500,000 in equipment, and they're letting you get on the road. in this condition. So I
That's
gave the guy,
crazy.
like, I go, here's 4 pairs of glasses that are going to fix your problems. Take these and go. And it was the Vans Warped Tour, so he gave me like 6 pairs of tennis shoes to for payment. So I got a bunch of Vans tennis shoes as
That's
because he
so
was
funny.
so happy and so
Yeah.
elated, right? And that's what makes that whole thing worth it. I'm sorry to get off track there.
No, 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 not at all. This is exactly this. Right. I wanted to have you on, because we were talking again. I find you very humble and said, "Oh, I'm not really. I don't know if I'll be very interested. I don't know if I'm no. This is. I want to talk to fans, and you're a huge fan. But I also wanted to talk about the work that you're doing because it is massively important, and
Thank you.
it's that thing of music makes people's lives better.
Yes.
But it's the Maslow's hierarchy, right? You need to be able to
Yes.
see. You need to be able to have shelter. All those things
Right.
have to be taken
Food
care of
comes first. Yeah,
before you can
absolutely.
appreciate art. So
Yes.
you're doing phenomenal work.
Thank you.
So do you remember? So Damn the Torpedoes was the first album. Then that was kind of the first drop. Do you remember? Was there a point at which you sort of thought, oh, I don't know, are they kind of having a wobble here, or are they sort of phasing out now? Because obviously around sort of Full Moon Fever, there were questions around, even in the band, about whether Tom was going to sort of break up the Heartbreakers and go alone. Was there ever a period where you sort of drifted for a sort of a moment, or were you always just locked into everything Tom was doing?
I was pretty much locked into everything. I was definitely still on with Southern accents because, having been born in the South, coming to California, like that resonated with me as
Yeah.
well. Having lived in London, I was a Dave Stewart fan. But clearly that dichotomy of the 2 types of songs on there. Like, I've got a theme, but I don't really have a theme. How is
Yeah.
the guy from Crouch End in London going to get me through my Gainesville roots? Right? I mean, it's crazy to think that's what happened. So certainly some ups and downs over time, like anything, but never abandoned. Always a defender of Tom. And I know he had the time of hitting the wall, the drug use, all those things. Those were
Yeah.
kind of evident, but we didn't have the social media at the time to know what was going on and why things were what they were as well. So in the fire, right, another big incident in his development as well. I'm trying to think of there's some albums I don't like as much as other albums. Absolutely, that's just the way things are.
And that's always going to be the same. And I've heard it's crazy because, on Tom Petty Nation or you're around the Facebook groups and you hear people saying, oh, yeah, Mojo just never landed for me. Or the last DJ, and like, are you kidding me? Mojo? Mojo's one of the best rock and roll records ever recorded, man. I mean, as a fly on the wall, like if any album to be in the room for, I think I might even pick that one over Wildflowers.
Yeah.
Just to see the process of it, just to see those songs grow so organically.
Yeah. But the idea of being in Malibu with Rick Rubin in the trailer is pretty good to be a hang for Wildflowers as well. Rick would be interesting to see. But no, I'm with you on the Mojo. And even when you and Matt were talking the other day about Echo, I popped that back on. I'm like, damn it, they're right. That is fantastic. But again, it's such a catalog. You do go and rediscover things.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I absolutely love and adore about Tom is he literally can take you from being a 16-year-old to being somebody near the end of life where you've got lullabies, songs of It's All Right for Now, to just a riff you thought, how is that not written in 2020, right? He wrote this brand new guitar riff. So it's a lifetime, again, soundtrack of your life cliche, kind of true in this case where he takes you from both ends. And I do know, and I think a lot of people don't, this is the place to appreciate somebody like Mike, but his songwriting, his riffs, how much he was involved in a lot of the hits. I don't think the common man knows. I think the Tom Petty project people know, but I don't think the rest of the world knows. So I'm always kind of a big advocate. Not that Mike needs any help from me, but I'm just saying I don't think people appreciate the co-captain's spot in the history of the band.
Absolutely. And it's that thing that, I mean, even beyond, he writes Refugee or he writes the riff for Free Girl Now or You Wreck Me. And he comes in and Tom knows how to work with those things, but it's all the other things he did as well. Like it'll all work out.
Yes.
From Let Me Up, which is, again, doing this podcast has really given me a much deeper love of a lot of songs that I'd sort of either missed or forgotten about or underappreciated. But Tom gives It'll All Work Out to Mike and says, look, can you make this a song? Because I just can't deal with this right now. Gives him the chords and Mike goes away and creates this unbelievable piece of music that Tom says no one else touched. It's essentially that's Mike Campbell start to finish on the instrumentation on that track. Or something like, what I just did a couple of weeks ago, Dark of the Sun.
Yes.
That guitar solo it's just mind-blowing. And it's so simple, and it's not like Running Down a Dream, and it's not this big shreddy thing that, a lot of kids these days, it's not a very interesting guitar solo, but what he's doing in there. Mike Campbell's such a genius of a technical guitarist, of a field guitarist, and he just knows what to play, right? And that's that thing, like you said, him and Tom getting together. I'm not a spiritual person. I don't believe in karma or anything, but there's something that they were meant to be
Absolutely.
together, you know?
Absolutely. Meant to be. Yeah, this
Yeah.
built to last. We'll call that
There
other
we go.
album title as well. Another great song with a great bass line. But one of my favorite things is when you get on the Mike Campbell bandwagon, and people are probably a lot of people can't name who the lead guitarist is for
Yeah.
Tom Petty, but they've enjoyed so many of his solos, is hearing musicians. I think one of my favorites was a lead guitarist from Bad Religion. And you're like, well, that's a good punk band, but they're
Yeah.
a punk band. And his thing was, he goes, my goal is to do what Mike Campbell does. He goes, play the minimum amount to add to the song and not be a showboat, and
Yeah.
do what is right for the music as well. And I thought that's funny as punk rock guys appreciating, kind of a mainstream rock and roll person thing. But there's
Yeah.
50,000 musicians out there that go, I get what he's doing. And it's easy to say, but you want to be Eddie Van Halen when you don't need to be, right?
Well, and it's funny that you get this all the time too with musicians when you're talking to a musician, you're interviewing or chatting. Well, who are your influences? And they go through, and it's like, well, people think, well, that doesn't sound anything like what you do. Well, no, but
Right.
the Beatles don't sound like anything like Metallica or Queen, and
Right.
Queen doesn't sound anything like this band and that band, but Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
But influence doesn't mean that I want to sound like that. It just means that it feeds into
Yeah.
what you're doing the same way that any sort of art does. Any writers, they might listen, they might read, I don't know, Mark Twain. But
Yes.
Stephen King doesn't write anything like Mark Twain.
Right.
So, it's that thing of influences. I know I said
Painters. Yeah, absolutely right. Very true.
yeah. So moving on, so we've done Mojo, we've covered some Fillmore stuff. Has there been is there sort of an era that hasn't been tapped back into yet? Because obviously we've got the Fillmore, we got the Wildflowers and all the rest.
Mhm.
We got more Mojo now. We got that kind of with the 3 extra tracks that we got from Mojo. Is there anything else that you're thinking, man, I'd love to hear what this was?
Yeah, yeah. I
was
think I'm sure is it the Old Gray Whistle Stop that kind of was that the name of that
Old Grey Whistle Test?
Yeah, Old Gray Whistle Test.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think because I came on board in '79, and of course I went and immediately bought the back catalog and got through everything at that time period. I would love to know, because I saw them right when they went to arenas. That was it.
Right.
The high energy. We're finally filling up a big room. This is the dream. I'd kind of like to get a little bit more, and I don't know if it's available or if the memories are there, but that time period where they were making it in England because they had to go there to get a little more successful before they popped in the US. And
Yeah.
I wonder what that time was like when they were thrown in with all these new wave bands. And I'd love to know, like, hey, do we plow on, or this is the right path? Do
Yeah.
we stop? Where's their head at that time period before that first wave of, massive success, right? When
Yep.
you're selling out arenas around the world on the Damn the Torpedoes album, right before that time period, I would love to know what was in their heads and what was going on.
Well, that's the biopic that you would want to see, right? That's if you're going to do a Tom Petty sort of bio, you want the early years Mudcrutch probably up to Damn the Torpedoes Breaking is what's most interesting, because like you said, that's the sketch that isn't colored in for us yet. We don't have as much information about what was going on back then, because and equally though, that show at the Whiskey, their debut at the Whiskey,
Yes, that's in this, in my mind,
opening for Blondie, who are also a debuting, and there is a video of that night of Blondie singing. Can't remember which one it is now. So someone at that gig had a camera,
right?
So you just think, I wonder if that's sitting in someone's closet somewhere, and one day someone's kid is going to find it and go, "What the hell is this?" Blondie, Heartbreakers, puts it in and thinks, "Oh, I might be able to sell this."
You reminded me of another story, and I don't know if you or the listeners know this one. So they were working with Blondie on tour, and Tom was like, "Boy, I really like that part in Rapture where she just raps through, because that was the first mainstream rap song."
Right.
And he took that, and Here Comes My Girl came out of it. Right. Now, I don't think a lot of people know that he took that, because that's got a lot of rap thing. And I saw him open for the Georgia Satellites one time. I don't know if you remember them. They were kind of a marginal successful band from the South as well. And they were opening for Tom as well. And during that tour, he said, "We have not played Here Comes My Girl," he goes, "in probably, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. So this is probably the mid to late 80s. And he said, he goes, "We played it," and he goes, "and I noticed there were a lot of guys in the audience and girls that were starting to hug, hold hands, touch each other. It's back in the set list, people."
Why not? I mean, that's like I said, I was talking to someone. A show is a contract between There's people on stage and the people in the audience, and you both got to hold your end up. And if
Yes.
your reaction to that, of course, the band's going to go, well, let's play this again because that's
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
You know,
Look
so,
what I'm seeing among 18,000 people that I'm catching are suddenly getting romantic and realizing why they're in love again. But you mentioned that laundry list of songs from Dan the Turbine. That's the kind of thing that gets cut out.
yeah.
And you're like, how does that get cut out? Well, it has to get cut out. I don't know what to tell you. There's too much material.
Well, and too much material that works live as well. That's the other thing.
Yes.
Because, there's lots of, I mean, I'm a huge Pete Gabriel fan. I'm a huge Genesis fan. There were songs in their catalogs that, well, Gabriel probably can do it, but you're like, there's some songs you probably Queen, there's tons of songs in the Queen catalog that you just can't do those things live on stage.
Yeah.
Where the Heartbreakers, Tom wrote so many great live songs.
Yeah.
Is there a song then that you never saw that you really wished that you'd seen live? And I know I'm giving you questions off the cuff that you haven't thought about yet, but I'm just kind of curious. Like, again, just someone who's seen a million shows, I'm just curious if there's, oh man, I really wish they'd done, how many more days or something like that.
I'm trying to think what I have missed out on. I would probably have to do a little bit more homework on that one because there's been so many shows, but I'm sure there is. One that I talk about that it's actually one of the 10 questions we'll get to later, but Stranger in the Night was always on the first 3 or 4 tours, and that was a creepy, good rock and roll song that got dropped. And I don't think I heard it after probably 1985 or something like that. And I saw and from the first 2 albums, and I saw the Long After Dark tour, and that's about when they stopped playing that because they had that 3-album run of The Waiting. Good luck. Good luck getting anything in from the first 2 besides 100%. Breakdown. And Breakdown disappeared for a long time as well. And things like that tend to come back when they finally pop up 10, 12. And again, I'm talking about a 40-year journey for me seeing them is they tend to be reconfigured and fantastic to hear again live. And we're so hungry for it because, right, a lot of people go, well, of course, I'm going to hear Breakdown tonight. And like you said, you don't get everything you want, right? There's just not possible.
I wonder if, I'm just thinking about Stranger in the Night, because you've said that now, and I'm kind of curious. I'm going to quickly look here, Mark.
Setlist FM?
Yeah, they played it up to 83. On and off, but I mean, not much. And then they played it a couple times in 2003. But I wonder, just with the lyrical content of that song, and whether that's just like it's being self-conscious about. Look, we know that this isn't a racist song, and this is not. We're not speaking. This is in character. We're speaking in character.
That's exactly right.
It's difficult to get that nuance across. I was on a conversation with someone about this. It's same with Money for Nothing by Dire Straits. There's all these songs where they're sung from character, but in a 3.5-minute pop song, it's difficult to really sort of build character and build context. Where if it's a movie, because the parallel is American History X, which is about a racist and has lots of racist language in it, but you've got more time to flesh that out and contextualize it. So I think that possibly that might have played into it.
I think that's very much like the Confederate flag disappearing.
Yeah,
I think that's analogous to that as well. So he had a lot of integrity and conscience and was a thoughtful person. So you don't write like that not being thoughtful.
Oh God, no. I mean, his lyrics are.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, that was the other thing that once I fell in love with Petty, and it was sort of Wildflowers was really that was the album that was like, oh, wait a minute, this is not just Refugee, and it's not, Here Comes My Girl, as brilliant as that song is, there's a depth to Wildflowers that goes beyond anything he really ever did. But so when you get into there, it was the lyrics, it's some of the stuff in the writing in there, because I'm a words guy, I like words. Although you wouldn't think it, knowing I'm fumbling my way through this conversation, but
I think that's why you appreciate Matt too. Matt's also a very good lyricist as well as being a good guitarist as well. And for somebody that age, it's even more mind blowing.
That's the thing. Him and Jake Thistle both. You think, who are you? Like what?
There's an old man in there. Let the old man out.
Yeah, because it took me a long time before I had any wisdom at all. I was an idiot for a lot of years,
And the Wildflowers, that's a nice starter kit for you. It kind of reminds me of the Rick Rubin. He goes, how is one guy writing this many good songs?
Yeah.
What is going on? Right? And think about who he's worked with, right? From the Beastie Boys on. So
when he comes, I always found that one funny too, because Rubin's younger than Petty when he comes in to produce him, and doesn't have a background of producing rock and roll records. Of course, producing music is producing music.
Yes.
You just listen to the song, and if you've got that ear for it, but still, like you said, the Beastie Boys guy is going to do Tom Petty,
who started out of his New York University NYU dorm room, started his business, which is crazy. And then he's got the other one too. He goes, I always make it for myself first, and then I know it will be good, right? Versus Jimmy Iovine's, I'm going to make a hit here, and they both were successful, right? Different ways to get there.
But it's another thing that Tom did, where we were talking earlier about, having the good sense to latch onto things, opportunities when they came along, where they needed Iovine. in
Yes.
that period. They needed someone to teach them how to make records in the studio. He needed Rick Rubin to get Wildflowers out properly because Iovine could not have made that record.
No,
It would have been a disaster.
too delicate.
Jeff Lynne couldn't have. I don't think Jeff Lynne would have produced Wildflowers properly because it
No.
would have been too produced.
You're
Rick
right.
Rubin was exactly the right guy at exactly the right time. And the same thing, a 3-album arc. You get
Yes.
3 with Rubin, 3 with Iovine, 3
Yeah.
with Jeff Lynne. Those little triplets come along, right? So
Yeah, no, absolutely.
which is your so there's a question for you then. Which if you had to pick, because we're going to pick a favorite album later, but if you had to pick a 3-pack, which do you go with Iovine's 3-pack, Rubin's 3-pack, or Jeff Lynne's 3-pack? And of course,
It's the
Jeff
best-
Lynne, 2 of them are
Yeah,
solo. But
it's the best child thing, but I'm going to go with Jimmy's 3 as well. And I think
Right.
it's part of it's because it's my birth spot with Tom is
Yeah.
probably in there as well. And again, I totally admit I'm not objective, but that's my choice.
and they sound so good, those records. And again, I always, like I said, I think of all the trilogies, that's the one where it's sort of it really is a 3-album set, and they all go together. You can play them one after the other, and they grow. They definitely they grow and they build, but
Yeah.
they sound like siblings.
They
you know,
do.
they sound like they go together.
Yes.
But of course, they were recording. You were talking earlier about, we're old enough to remember when artists recorded it. They put out an album a year, sometimes 2.
Yes.
And then they went on tour. So there was none of this sort of sitting around over deliberating on things for 5 years and trying to get the right guitar. Guns N' Roses spending 10 years and they get Chinese democracies, what you get after 10 years. Oh my God, So,
You
so it's
better
a
have the White
different
Album.
Okay, well, hey, Mark, thanks so much for taking the time. We've been sort of trying to get this organized for a little while now, so I'm glad we
Yes.
managed to find the time to sit down.
Me too.
Thanks for listening too. Like I said, I always want to make sure that people know that I am sincere when I say thank you for listening to anything I ever say, because this was a passion project for me. So finding this community of people, of amazing people who are not just musicians and not just, producers or fans, or whatever, but now we've got someone who's doing the amazing work that you're doing, making sure that artists get the supports that they need at a time when they're probably struggling, especially coming out of the pandemic. Please tell us again one last time where people can find information about the program that you run, and where can they find you?
Our website is sightandsoundcare.org. Sight and the and is AND, so sightandsoundcare.org. We're also on Facebook under Sight and Sound Care, and Instagram as well. And you can see things like my Tom Petty letter. You can see the pictures from the first time I saw him in 1979 on Facebook on Tom Petty Nation as well. But if you go to sightandsoundcare.org and you want to make a donation to help people get free health care, I will just mention no salaries, no income, 100% of the funds go to buying glasses and providing vision care for those people we appreciate and love so much.